You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 60, part 2. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey, friends, fans, and enemies. I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. So if you're just tuning in, if this is your first episode ever, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. This is the second part of an interview that I did with Eric McGill, who is a fabulous swinging trapeze artist in the UK. And we're talking in this part of the interview about some of his creative projects, how he approaches creation of circus, the relation to audience, the relation to the experience of the performer, all of these kinds of concepts and really neat aspects of circus that he's exploring. If I were you and listening in for the first time, would go back to the episode before this, which is episode 60, part 1, and just kind of listen to the story, listen to Eric's introduction, and then come back and listen to this episode. I promise it will still be here. Before I start playing the episode, I do want to give two little shout outs, two pieces of housekeeping. The first is to my amazing Patreons. As always, this show is not produced by a company. I'm not contracted. This isn't marketed by anyone. This is all word of mouth. And I can afford to produce it and have an amazing team of people help me because of Patreons. So if you go to patreon.com/theartistathlete, you are contributing directly to my sound editor, to my amazing assistant who books all my guests, and to Shared Cultured Concepts, who is my kind of editorial production help and the people who are like, hey, Shannon, why is your podcast late every week? Get it in. So thanks to everyone who is a Patreon and everyone on my staff for helping me out. I really could not do this alone. So to become a Patreon, again, it's patreon.com/theartistathlete. And if you give $5 a month or more, we'll send you a sticker. And if you give over 30, I will personally call you up, give you a thanks, and you can leave a little recording at the end of every episode. I also want to give a shout out to Jennifer G, Rebecca E, Olga A, Lisa H, and Laura L, all of whom donated to a cause that will help people and animals who are affected by the bushfire in Australia. I'm doing a fundraiser, and all of the information on it is on my Instagram account at @the_artist_athlete under a page that says Help Australia. So if you want more information about that, go to Instagram, go check that out. That is happening until those fires end. And that's all the housekeeping I think I have. So without further ado, here's part 2 of my interview with swinging trapezist Eric McGill. I just have to ask you, because I was like stalking you and looking at your website, and you mentioned this a little earlier, your virtual reality project. This is so cool.
Yeah.
I was watching the video a bit, and I'll definitely link to it so other people can access it through the show notes and other places. But and it's so neat because it's like a first-person perspective of being on an aerial apparatus.
Yeah, we filmed it with like a helmet cam. So I put a GoPro on the people in the video are my trapeze students. And I came in one day and said, here, put this on your head and we're going to work this out. And they were really amazing. And what we ended up with was, it's about a 20-minute long piece of combined first person and third person perspective, because sometimes I think your eyes kind of need a break from that motion. And I wanted to explore the experience of being on trapeze. Like, trapeze has been my love for as long as I can remember. I can barely remember a time in my life where I wasn't involved with a trapeze in some way. And I love it so much that I'm always looking for new ways to bring that to people. And I thought there's so many people that will never or could never understand what it's like being up there doing like high level acrobatics on a trapeze. And I'd love to like, teach the whole world how to do trapeze. But there's also something to be said just for the passive experience of being the artists themselves that I thought was really interesting as a relationship to explore, not just seeing them and maybe you relate to the artist, maybe you don't, but you don't really understand what they're going through, because so much about circus is illusion, and the illusion of effortlessness or the perceived emotional journey that they're going through. But there's a real person there that's going through a real thing. And to see the world through their eyes, I thought was a really interesting pathway into a new connection with that person.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, sorry. I'm glad you like it. What we made, so we filmed it over a couple of nights, a bunch of sort of aspiring circus performers, people that I teach, on Monday nights. We got together, got some lights in our studio. That's filmed in No Fit States studios where they hold their classes and their rehearsals for their shows. They let me have it for a night, which was very, very nice of them. Thank you, No Fit State. They also gave me the lights and the sound system and said, yeah, do what you need to do. I got a bunch of GoPros set up in different points in the room and edited the footage together myself to create what was a sort of installation piece. That video is on YouTube now, and it's on my website, ericmcgill.net, if you want to look it up. And then what I did with that footage is I put it in a box. It was about the size of a phone booth, I'd say. It was a black phone booth shaped box with 2 virtual reality headsets sticking out the side of it and headphones on little hooks. So you could walk up to it just as as you would a phone booth, put the headphones on your ears and look into this little virtual reality portal to watch a full show of performers from the first person perspective.
Where did you set it up?
So it lived in No Fit State Studios for a while. It was their project. So I wanted them to be able to experience it first. There was talk about bringing it around to different locations as a sort of promotional tool for No Fit State's own productions. And in the end, it didn't travel around too much, but I wanted to then take those concepts, and I liked the idea of an installation piece, but then I decided, okay, well, I still want to be performing. And I thought, okay, well, what can I do with that? And I decided like, okay, let's combine the two. So I rigged up a GoPro and got some funding from the Arts Council of Wales, where I live. And I got about a week-long research and development period to work with a giant movie screen. It was about 10 meters by 6 meters of a projected image of what I was seeing on the trapeze. So if you imagine me in a movie theater, and what you see on the screen is the live footage of what I can see from a GoPro on my head. I'm hanging on a trapeze just in front of that movie screen, and I'm going through my movements, having my experience, living my life on a trapeze, while you experience both from the outside and from the inside.
Wow. Are you mic'd as well? Like, can they hear you breathing?
We didn't put a mic on me, but the room where we were sort of exploring it was sort of small enough that you were only a couple of meters away from me. I really wanted it to be, what I missed about the VR was it's your entire field of view. Mm-hmm. So I wanted the screen to be enormous, and I wanted the people to be as close to me as possible.
That's really cool. I want to see it. Did you have a showing, or what was the result of it?
Well, we did a week's worth of research and development in a circus school here in the UK called Cirque Media in Bristol. We finished that, it would have been about 12 months ago. And I actually think I'm going to move away from that project. I'm starting a different kind of show from here. The director that I worked with it on is now doing a PhD. His name is Paul Evans, and he works at the National Centre for Circus Arts in London now, but he's going to be doing a whole thesis on the sort of experience of doing circus and how we might better transmit the sort of sensational reality and create a greater level of what we were calling kinesthetic empathy, which is how you can transmit the feelings of an experience into someone else so that for them it feels physical. So I move my arm and you know how moving your arm feels. And there are what's called mirror neurons in your brain that fire in sympathetic ways so that you don't move your arm stays still, but the same neurons that would fire if you were moving your arm fire in that moment in synchronicity with the person that you're watching. And we are trying to find ways to heighten that connection in our R&D. And then now that's going to be his whole path of study for his thesis going forward.
That's so cool. I'm going to have to get his contact information from you and bother him for an interview as well. That's really neat.
Yeah. He's a really interesting guy.
Yeah, sounds like it. And then I guess my last little point that Hannah really wanted me to ask you about is you brought it up earlier, the counterweighting work you're doing.
Oh, yeah. That's been one of the most fun projects I've done over the last 3 years now. So I met, his name's Barnes Munn, my counterweighter, and we met, 5 years ago? We met 5 years ago. Yeah, we're counting. 5 years ago at a gig, and we really fell in love with each other's work. He loved what I did on swinging. I love what he was doing counterweighting. Maybe I should explain what counterweighting is.
I was just going to ask. Yeah.
So the way we use it in circus, and it's especially prevalent in the UK, I don't know how prevalent it is in the rest of the world, although I know that it is starting to spread out.
Like Mizuki's act, it's starting to gain a lot of traction.
Oh my God. Yeah. What an act. Oh, holy crap. I had no idea that was being developed to such an extent. And yeah, we'll come back to what I'm doing in a moment, but let's just take a minute to...
Can we take a minute for this? Yeah. Thank you.
For that incredible act that she made. Yeah, using counterweighting in such cool ways and with a huge, fantastic counterweighting technique and fantastic silks technique, doing all kinds of new stuff on there. Well done, Mizuki. Holy crap.
Bravo. We'll link to her as well so you guys can know what we're talking about.
Yes, link to her. You got to see her. She's incredible. Okay. What am I doing? I'm doing...
Will you explain what a counterweight is?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So imagine a very basic pulley system. A rope goes up through a pulley, through another pulley, and then down. So you have an artist, an aerialist on one piece of apparatus. It doesn't matter what it is. And then on the other end, you have someone in a rock climbing harness. So they're kind of sitting down. The rope attaches to basically just in front of their crotch. And they are running up and down a ladder. And the ladder allows them to sort of hold on tight so they can block them in place. But as the counterweighter goes up, the aerialist goes down, and as the aerialist goes up, the counterweighter goes down. And that's the basic premise of it. You're using the weight of the counterweighter to lift the aerialist and their apparatus up in the air so that they can do their tricks at height at its most basic level. And what I've started to do with my friend Barnes is using that propulsion, that speed that you can lift someone up with, to create a kind of dead point at the top. So because he can climb to the top of the ladder and just jump off, when I get to the top of the lift and he gets to the floor, I get this real flight from it. And he was already doing that with his wife, Shannon McKenna, on a hoop and on silks. And he's been taking it all around. No Fit State does a lot of it as well.
But they were starting to right? So you're on 2 points.
So I'm on a trapeze. So our system is slightly more complex. So what we've made is a trapeze with 12-meter long ropes. So
where are you setting this up?
It's actually quite easy to set up, actually.
Yeah?
Yes. So, but they need to be very long because they also need to travel over to barns.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. All right.
So imagine maybe 8 meters of visible rope, and then the rest is going across a truss and then down to him on his ladder.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. I don't know why I was thinking of that as like a dead rigged, like 12. I was like, what? Okay, got it.
No. We can do. We don't need that much height. We can do it in 6-meter ceilings.
Okay.
So we can get away with it being pretty low, but ideally it's like 10. So what he does is, what the trapeze does is there's the bar and the ropes go up. They stay parallel the whole time, but the ropes themselves, the cotton ropes, go through these big giant pulleys that are above my head, across a truss, and then down into a double pulley that then go and down and attach to Barnes and his counterweighting.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's also now a third person. So imagine this picture. I'm on the trapeze, Barnes is on the ladder, and then he has another rope coming down between his legs for someone to pull him down, thus me up, even faster. So he was jumping off, I was going up. That was all very nice, but it wasn't fast enough. We needed bigger jumps. We needed more flight. We needed more control.
Always.
So yeah, bigger, higher, faster, stronger. And so we added a third person, his wife, my friend Shannon McKenna, who's tailing, what we call tailing, Barnes, to pull him down even faster. So I shoot up even faster still. But because we've got this huge amount of flight at the top, it means I can do back saltos, I can do pirouettes, I can drop down and catch myself on my feet, I can drop down and catch myself on my hands while flipping and twisting, and all the same kind of acrobatic vocabulary that you might normally find on a swinging trapeze, we can string together and create complex sequences on basically a static trapeze.
Because instead of using the weightlessness or the momentum of the swing, you're now using it of the like upward force.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a propulsion trapeze now.
Do you have video of it? That sounds
yeah, it's on my Instagram.
Okay,
You might have to roll back a bit before I don't know if I posted anything recently, maybe back in June when we were working on it for the Glastonbury Festival. But yeah, it's on there. And yeah, it affords a really, I think what I love about the counterweighted trapeze is it finally gives me a choice over the pace of the act.
Interesting.
Where the swinging trapeze has a very particular pace. So you swing, you push the swing all the way up to horizontal. And as soon as you're at horizontal, boom, it's time to go. You do your sequence. Your sequence takes maybe 3 swings. The swing dies a little bit as you do that. And then you push the swing up and start again. And there's, even with the most contemporary swinging acts you'll find out there, very little variation from that formula. And what the counterweighted trapeze allows is more variation. It's kind of American juggling compared to European style juggling, where there's stops and starts, there's moments of flight, and then there's moments of stillness, and there's moments where I can just be doing regular static trapeze moves. Like I can throw in my static vocabulary in there, finish, land sitting, and then boom, right away into a pirouette, and have that kind of appear out of nowhere without having the sort of anticipation of a swing building up, and oh, here it comes. It can be, you can play with expectation, and the moments for acrobatics can be unexpected and much more varied and spread out in a way that is possible but isn't often seen on swinging trapeze.
That's very cool. I love that attitude of like researcher, I'm going to be very inarticulate for a moment, but just thinking about like, okay, taking this discipline and taking your virtuosic movement and taking everything that you've learned and then kind of altering the rules a bit to get something to where you want it artistically.
Yeah. It's two-dimensional swinging trapeze, I guess. It's skewing it in such a way that it's still recognizable. Technique-wise, it's pretty similar. The connection I have with Barnes is very particular. I compare it to duo trapeze a bit because it's kind of like doing duo trapeze over a tin can telephone.
Sure. Wow.
We're connected through the ropes. He feels me, I feel him. He lifts, I feel it, I react, and he reacts in turn. So we're connected as if we were holding hand to hand, but there's, 12 meters of ropes between us.
And as a counterweighter, as that person, like I'm thinking back, like as a lunger, like generally that person is not, they're part of the act in a very integral way, but for an audience experience, they're not really present, hopefully.
No, often they're not even on stage, not even visible.
Yeah, that's it. So in this counterweight scenario, have you guys made any choices around that?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't always the case when you have a counterweighted act, but with Pirates of the Caribbean, this is the name of our company. It's a great name, isn't it? Yeah. The one thing that they really wanted to focus on, like what it was really important to them and it's important to me as well, is like to show how everything works, like to reveal the magic and for everything to be sort of egalitarian in that way. Like there's no one on the show who's just a rigger. Like Barnes does counterweighting and he does a lot of the rigging, but he also sings and he also performs and he is lit and is as visible and involved, and he's on the same kind of emotional journey as I am. We stay connected. It's about the two of us, the three of us, really, when we're doing this counterweighted trapeze act. So it's not me, the star, and my assistants. It's, we're all in it together.
So we're like way over time. So I do want to stop. This is also awesome. Thank you for coming on and explaining the crazy world.
It's been really cool being on. Yeah.
So you listen to the podcast, so you must know my final question is...
I do.
Yeah. What advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
I did think about this. I think the best thing that I've learned that I wish I had known earlier is how to forgive myself.
Whoa.
Yeah, to forgive myself because I am not and have never been like the world's most driven, the world's like highest achieving acrobat artist in the world, and I think it took me a really long time to appreciate what I had to offer, but also in moments where things were really difficult, to just accept that the way things are going is okay. Some days I don't want to train. Some days I only want to do a little bit. I only want to do my favorite bits. But I feel like I was trained in an atmosphere for a large chunk of my life where you had to push yourself to be the best. And that means 110% every day, no matter what. Doesn't matter what's going on with your life. Doesn't matter that, your boyfriend left you or your friends just died or whatever's going on. No, you have a job to do. And that job is give it your all now. And I think that's really helpful for some people. I think that purity of focus, at least an attempt of that for me, was helpful for a time. But I think the thing that was really lacking from the way I treat myself in life is that notion of forgiveness, that sometimes I'm not okay or I'm not at 110%, and that's fine. And me training my way now with a greater respect for what my physical self and my mental self is actually capable of means I can train so much better, I train so much smarter rather than train so much harder. And that means my improvements feel greater and are greater because I'm able to give myself the space to grow in the moments where I'm ready to grow.
Dude, nice. That's a good one. That's really wise.
I think it took me 10 years to figure that out, at least. I mean, I'm 32 now. It took me a long time to get there, but I think if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it exactly the same way, but with a different mindset.
Did you come to that realization? Like, was there a moment in time where you were like, damn, I need to be nicer to myself? Like, it's going to be okay. Or was it just experience after experience that kind of like led you to this realization?
So I lived in Montreal for close to 10 years. I did all of my schooling there. I was at the National School for 4 years. I stuck around and, that was my base. I worked a lot, but then I always came back to Montreal. And after a time, the opportunity for me to move to the UK presented itself. And I moved here and I found a very different circus community. I found a very, very different group of people who had different goals and different motivations that had come from different walks of life. And I found myself just treating myself better and, training and having a good time of it. I wasn't just going plow, 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 double twist, double twist, double twist. I was chatting. I was like still talking and being funny with people in the room and just everything felt like it had a different energy. And I found myself being a lot happier with myself and being a lot better to myself. And I was like, well, I just had to have a think about what changed. And I've been here about 5 years now. And I think that's what's changed. Just over this time, I've found a way of being myself, being my best self, but with a different perspective. And I think it took a different location and a different community to give me that.
Sure.
That idea.
Yeah, Montreal's intense. It's
intense.
It's super intense.
I don't want to be shitting on Montreal. I love Montreal. I still love going back there every time. And I love the people there and I love the training. I love all that. It's great. And I needed it. I think I needed it at the time, but I don't think I need it now. And I think even if I were finding myself all of a sudden back in that ENC Montreal, be the best world, I'd take it with a grain of salt in a way that I didn't before.
Yeah. Dope. Well, dude, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
If you want, or like for sure, you can. Oh, so I should say like podcast wrap up, like cuddle time. You might experience like later today, like, oh shit, I should have said that. Or damn, I probably sounded like a fucking idiot. You didn't. You sounded great. Everything you said was super helpful. It's just like a normal, like post-podcast regret is what I've been calling it, because probably 1 out of every 3 interviews I get, someone has messaged me and been like, hey, I'm feeling really weird about the interview we just did. And like, do I sound okay? And it's like, yeah, you guys are great. Everybody's great. It's fine. Yeah. So just know that that's like, that may happen and it's totally normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And cool.
And then is there like anything that like, because I usually put out like in the show notes and then when I make a post on Instagram about it, is there anything you really want me to highlight? Or like, I definitely want to send people to your website so they can see the virtual reality stuff. Is there anything else like that we didn't talk about that you may want to introduce people to?
You know what I'd like to give a shout out for? Yeah. If that's all right.
Yeah.
I'd like to give a shout out to my podcast.
Oh, dude, I didn't even ask you about this. Yeah, I saw it on your website. What's the deal? You've got a podcast.
Well, not really. There was a couple of, this was a couple of years ago now, I think. But when we were in creation for the Pirates of the Caribbean show, ended up being called Home. It's quite a political company, and we were talking about like the kind of politics that we want to have and the sort of message that we want to have in the show. We knew the themes that we were working with, but we all had sort of individual research projects that we were sent off by the directors to say, okay, look into that subject and we'll talk about different ways that we can integrate it into the show. And my research project was to look into how gay and lesbians, how they were portrayed in the circus. And I found that the way that people treat homosexuality on a circus stage was just so far behind what every other visual and even non-visual medium is doing, or is how they're treating homosexuality. Like, you know, back in the 80s, the gays were the butt of the joke, or they were the villains, or if women were shown together on their own, well, if they were to be lesbians, then they were not lesbians in a loving, cozy house drinking a cup of tea. They were probably doing some kind of sexy dance for men. Like, it was about women performing their sexualness outwards rather than in a loving way towards other people. And I was trying to explore, well, what are some good examples? Where are we at in the circus world with showing homosexual relationships? And are we doing better? And I was on the lookout for gay and lesbian people in the circus industry and what their experiences were, whether there were any examples of people showing a soft love, or if they were showing, you know, a hot lesbian sexy scene, then how they felt about it and how that came about in the creation process for that number or that show. And I managed to get in touch with a conference called the Circus and Beyond Conference. And I said, hey, I've been thinking about this thing. I saw that you're doing a call out for speakers. I'm kind of on a journey right now. Could I come and tell you about what I find on this journey at the conference? And they were really into it. They were looking for new kinds of subject matter. And the theme of the show was, of the conference was, where has circus been and where is it going? And I came in being like, well, this is where I hope it's going. And I did an interview with one of the basses from Cassis, who is married to a man and does acrobatic hand-to-hand act with him in their show Knee Deep. And they have another show, which I can't think of the name of. But they've been working together for ages, and quite serendipitously, it comes up in the first 5 minutes of the podcast. He was actually making a show with his husband about showing a soft, romantic love between two men. The show is called You and I by Cassis, and it's now on tour. They're about to do Edinburgh, and it's a great example. I haven't actually seen it. Unfortunately, I can't really speak to its quality, but I think the concept of it, and he goes into great detail about what he wanted to bring to the stage, because he'd seen that as well, that gays, usually it's the butt of a joke, or if you're going to show someone as being gay or lesbian on stage, it's a really difficult line, because people see brothers, people see friends, people see sisters. They don't see lovers unless you go into that sexual territory oftentimes. So there's a real play and there's a sort of nuance to be aware of, that because that hasn't really been played with in the acrobatic world, people don't have any signposts along the way to say, this is okay, this is not okay.
Right.
How do we explore a physical relationship, or even non-physical, that is expressed through circus? Because, you know, you get a man and a woman up on a trapeze, they're going to do a trapeze act. Don't even start the music. People are already thinking, they're probably fucking. You know, like that's the premise.
Which is a fascinating kind of reverse of that question too. Is like, is it automatically when it's a man and a woman presenting gender stereotypes, they're automatically in a relationship or they're automatically fucking, right? There's
totally.
No other, scenario for that.
Well, people go there first. Yeah. So then anything that you do after that, you have to fight against. And that's the other interview that's up there is me interviewing someone who does duo trapeze. I don't feel I'm speaking out of line to say he's a gay man, but he does a duo trapeze act with a female partner. And you know, when we were all at school together, and that was one thing they were really full against. They didn't want to do the I love you, I hate you, touch me, no, don't touch me, oh no, do touch me because we actually have to do this trick now. that play is so inherent, I think, in what we do when we're partnering in acrobatics, be in the air or on the floor. But as soon as you need two people close enough to touch, you know, what scenario in our daily lives outside of circus does that happen where you're in such close physical proximity to someone that you touch them? You know, people's mind go to that place very quickly. And if you're a gay man and a straight woman, how do you fight against that? And they've done an excellent job with that act. The act that they made was a kind of beautiful combat. I see them as quite childlike, but we talk about that on the episode, that there was still a play there where they wanted to be combative. They didn't want to be romantic, but it also couldn't be an act about domestic abuse, right? Because that's the territory they are getting into.
Interesting.
So that was what I was looking into. How do we play with that nuance of not brothers, but lovers, not lovers, but not enemies, not in a fight, because those lines are very easy to cross over without realizing. And what we need, I think, now is just more people trying it, more people getting it wrong, more people going, oh, we wanted to be brothers, but everyone thinks we're gay. And people get to that place and like, oh, people think we're in a relationship. That's not what we wanted. And probably if you have two straight men who find themselves in that situation, they're going to change the choreography just a little bit. So they know they'll hold up a hand and go, oh no homo, right? Because they don't want to be seen that way. But that's, I think, in the end, what it's going to take. It's going to take a straight woman being like, no, I'll do this romantic act with this other woman. She's not in a relationship with me, but that's the scene we want to create because that's what the director wants, or because this is where the show's going. It's going to take that, but it's going to be a difficult, bumpy process. So I ended up interviewing 4 people, really. I had to pull the third interview because I won't say too much detail, but one of the people I interviewed had sort of just come into their new sexual situation and didn't feel comfortable talking about it in a public sense. So in the end, I tried cutting it down, and then I just cut it completely because she thought it wasn't right. So, and I don't want to be putting anything out there that makes anyone uncomfortable. So there's 2 episodes. I called it the Why Circus Podcast. And I just wanted to know why are we not doing better in the circus world when TV and movies wouldn't dare not have a gay character, but circus doesn't seem to feel the same way.
Yeah, totally. I wonder how much of that is cultural too. Do you know? Like,
you mean the culture within the circus?
The culture within the circus, maybe, but I also think about, like going to Southeast Asia or other places where like men hold hands all the time. And that's not automatically inferred as like a homosexual relationship. That's just friendship between men. or like exploring those kinds of things as well. I wonder like how much of when Western eyes look at two men doing an acrobatic act together, like they make these relational associations that aren't always, that may be cultural in nature. And I mean like a
totally.
Yeah. I mean more Western culture than circus culture, I think.
Well, no, I think that goes both ways though, because I know I dare any duo male couple who do an acrobatic together to come to me and say, we've never been heckled for being gay. Like, I bet you every duo, two women, two men who do an acrobatic act together where they have to touch, I bet you every single one of them has a story or have had to explain to people that, no, we are not a romantic couple. We are just, acrobatic partners, not romantic partners.
Yeah.
Different people will see what they want. And the real difficulty is playing with intent more than people's perception, because I think you can have, I bet you people go see You and I by Cassis and go, oh, those two brothers really care about each other. and they'll just miss it. They will see what they want to see. And people will always see what they want to see. People will see a hand-to-hand act where two guys are like fighting and they're in a prison and they're beating each other up and then they do a handstand. Like you can have this crazy machismo over top and people will still see, oh, I bet they really love each other. Or like other, the lads will come by and be like, oh yeah, they're probably fucking. Like people will have that perspective even if you don't want them to. But I think not playing into people's expectations is where we can really make progress.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely point people in that direction. That's awesome. All right, I have to go.
Cool. I do too.
Thanks so much for talking. This was awesome. And I'll email
really
you
great.
And send you all the details when the episode comes out.
Cool. Yeah, if people want to look me up, you can go to ericmcgill.net. I'm at Eric__McGill on Instagram and Twitter. And
double underscore.
Nice. Double underscore. The single underscore was taken.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, have a good day, Eric, or good night.
You too. Yeah, it's 7:30 now. But, cool. Yeah, you have a good day. It was great talking to you, Shannon.
Yeah, man, you too. I think I'm coming to the UK hopefully this summer. So I'll try to stop by Cardiff if I can.
Oh, wicked. Yeah, hit me up.
Yeah, sweet.
All right.
Take
care of yourself.
You too.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
That was my interview with Eric McGill. Eric has a ton of amazing ideas. He has great work that he's doing, not just as a technician or as an artist or as a performer, but also as a creator. He's innovating in the fields of virtual reality and also with his hilariously named company, Pirates of the Carabiner, where he's using counterweight systems to create kind of a new way of approaching aerial discipline. If you go to his website, ericmcgill.net, you can see video of all of this, as well as tuning into the podcast he mentioned that he has. It has 2 episodes. They're right there on the website for you. And that's all, again, at ericmcgill.net. Also, if you're interested in kind of furthering the discussion we had at the end of the episode about gender norms, about relationship roles on stage in circus, another great episode that you might want to check out of my podcast would be episode 53. It's called The Circus Goes On As Long As You Do, and it's with Matthew Richardson, who is also a gay man who is making a whole bunch of videos dedicated to showing love and the experience of being queer through circus in a ton of different ways. It's really cool work, and I think both Eric and Matthew are doing an amazing job of challenging what we see as traditional gender norms in circus to catch up with the rest of art and, frankly, with the rest of society. So go check those out. Go support those artists. If you want to follow Eric on Instagram, he's Eric_McGill. And he's posting a lot of really cool work there as well. For aerial training tips and inspiration, you can always follow me on Instagram at @the_artist_athlete. I'm online, theartistathlete.com. I'm on Facebook, and again, that Patreon page so you can support this little project of mine is patreon.com/theartistathlete. I've got some really cool stuff. We're working on some tank tops and other logo stuff that's going to be Artist Athlete Podcast specific, coming out hopefully in the spring. So that will be only available to Patreons. So go sign up on the Patreon page and we'll start getting you in the loop on all that stuff. Hope you guys have a great week and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And you'll have an opportunity to hear me talk at you next week, friends, fans, and enemies. The Artist Athlete Podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete Podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and slings and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete Podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm on Patreon.
Hello, all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete Podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.